The morning air on Kepler 442b tasted different than Earth air. Nari Kim had never breathed Earth air, but her grandmother always said the colony air lacked something important, something alive. As she walked through the whispering woods with her collection bag, Nari thought she understood what grandmother meant. The trees here were not really trees. They looked like giant blue crystals that grew from the ground and reached toward the twin suns. Their surfaces made soft singing sounds when the wind touched them. That was why colonists called this place the Whispering Woods. Nari loved the sound. It made her feel less alone. She was 17 years old and had lived on New Sol Colony her entire life. Her parents worked in the mining facilities that dug deep into the planet's crust. They found rare metals and energy crystals that helped power the colony's shields and machines. Nari wanted to study the planet's strange life forms instead. She wanted to understand the creatures that lived here before humans arrived. Most colonists feared the native wildlife. The planet had predators that could turn invisible. It had plants that could move and hunt. It had creatures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The colony's safety protocols warned everyone to stay in the protected zones, but Nari felt drawn to the wild places. She needed rare mineral samples for her xenobiology project. Professor Han had given her special permission to collect specimens from the outer zones. Nari carried a scanner that would warn her if dangerous life forms came near. She also had an emergency beacon that would call for help. The path through the crystal trees led to a clearing where the ground sparkled with deposits of different minerals. Nari knelt and carefully collected samples of blue-green crystals that pulsed with their own light. These crystals stored energy from the twin suns during the day and released it slowly at night. They were perfect for her study of how local life forms used energy. As she worked, her scanner made a soft beeping sound. Something was moving nearby. Nari looked up and listened. The crystal trees continued their gentle singing. She heard nothing else. Sometimes small creatures set off the scanner. Usually they ran away when they sensed humans. She returned to her work, but the beeping grew stronger. The scanner showed a life form that was not moving away. It was getting closer. Nari stood and looked around the clearing. She saw nothing but crystal trees and patches of colored minerals. Then she heard it, a sound like a kitten crying. But no Earth cats lived on this planet. The sound came from behind a cluster of tall blue crystals. Nari walked toward it slowly. Her scanner beeped faster as she got closer to whatever was making the noise. Behind the crystals, she found something impossible. A cube-shaped creature the size of her fist lay on its side. Its surface showed patterns that looked exactly like an albino tiger's stripes. White background with pale gray markings that seemed to flow and shift as she watched. The creature's body pulsed with weak bioluminescent light. The light grew dimmer each time it pulsed. Nari had studied the colony's database of local life forms. She recognized this creature immediately. It was a lumicube. But lumicubes were supposed to be the size of hover cars. They were apex predators that could become completely invisible. They hunted in packs and were known to attack anything that entered their territory. The colony's defense systems were specifically designed to detect and repel lumicubes. This one was clearly very young, and it was dying. The creature made the crying sound again. Its pale tiger stripes flickered as its bioluminescent systems failed. Nari knew she should activate her emergency beacon and leave immediately. Colony protocols were clear about contact with dangerous native species, even young ones. But she could not walk away. The little lumicube reminded her of the stories her grandmother told about tigers on old Earth. Before humans left their home planet, tigers were beautiful and powerful predators. They were also nearly extinct because humans feared them too much to let them live. Grandmother always said that fear made humans do stupid things. Love made them do brave things. Nari knelt beside the dying creature. She could see that it was starving. Lumicubes fed on pure energy, not organic matter. The scanner in her bag could detect the energy signatures of different minerals. According to her readings, the creature needed the same type of energy that powered the colony's systems. She had energy crystals in her collection bag, small ones that stored power from the twin suns. She pulled out a crystal that glowed with stored sunlight. The dying lumicube sensed the energy source immediately. Its stripes brightened slightly, and it made a different sound, almost like purring. Nari held the crystal near the creature. It could not move much, but it managed to touch one corner of its cubic body to the crystal. Immediately, energy flowed from the crystal into the lumicube. The tiger stripes became brighter and more defined. The creature's body pulsed with stronger light. She fed it 3 more crystals before the creature seemed stable. Its bioluminescent patterns now pulsed steadily. The tiger stripes moved in slow, hypnotic waves across its cubic surface. Most amazing of all, the creature looked at her with what appeared to be gratitude. Nari knew she was breaking every safety protocol by helping this predator. But she also knew she could not leave it to die alone in the woods. She had brought several empty specimen containers for her mineral collection. She carefully lifted the young lumicube and placed it in the largest container. The creature did not resist. It seemed to understand that she was trying to help. The walk back to the colony took 2 hours. Nari kept the container close to her body to keep the creature warm. She could feel it moving occasionally, but it did not try to escape. By the time she reached her family's housing unit, she had decided to name the creature Baek. It meant white, in Korean, like the creature's albino coloring. Her parents were still at work. Nari had time to set up a proper habitat for Baek in her room. She used her knowledge of xenobiology to create an environment that would help the creature recover. She placed energy crystals around the habitat so Beck could feed whenever it needed to. As she worked, Nari wondered what she had gotten herself into. She was harboring one of the planet's most dangerous predators in her bedroom. If the colony authorities found out, she would face serious consequences. Her parents might lose their jobs. Her dream of studying xenobiology might end before it began. But when she looked at Beck resting peacefully in the habitat she had made, Nari felt something she had never experienced before, a connection to another living being that went beyond fear or caution. For the first time in her life, she did not feel alone. She had no idea that this moment would change everything, not just for her, but for the entire colony's understanding of what it meant to coexist with alien life. 3 weeks passed since Nari brought Baek home. The young lumicube had grown from the size of her fist to the size of a small book. Its tiger stripes had become more vivid and complex. The patterns moved across its cubic surface like living art. Sometimes Nari would sit and watch the patterns for hours, finding peace in their gentle flow. Beck seemed to enjoy her company too. When Nari entered her room after school, the creature's bioluminescent patterns would brighten with excitement. When she spoke to it in Korean, telling it about her day or her problems, Beck would pulse in rhythm with her voice. It was as if the creature was trying to understand human speech. Nari had researched everything she could find about lumicubes in the colony database. According to the official records, they were solitary hunters with no capacity for emotional bonds. They viewed other life forms only as prey or threats. The scientists who studied them said lumicubes had intelligence similar to earth sharks. They were efficient killers with simple minds focused only on survival. But Baek was nothing like the database descriptions. The creature showed curiosity about everything in Nari's room. It examined her books, her collection of mineral samples, even her old stuffed animals from childhood. Beck seemed to understand that these objects were important to Nari. It was careful never to damage anything. Most surprising of all, Beck appeared to have emotions. When Nari was sad, the creature's patterns would dim and pulse slowly, as if it shared her mood. When she was happy, Beck's stripes would dance with bright, cheerful colors. The creature was not just intelligent. It was empathetic in a way that science said was impossible. Nari began talking to Beck in both Korean and English. She told it stories her grandmother had shared about tigers on old Earth. She explained her love of studying alien life forms. She even confided her frustrations about school and the bullies who made her life difficult. The bullies had been a problem for years. Minho Park was the worst of them. His father was the colony administrator, which made Minho feel powerful and untouchable. He was popular with other students and good at sports. He seemed to target Nari specifically because she was different. She preferred studying to socializing. She cared more about alien creatures than human social games. Jiwon Lee was Minho's closest friend and biggest supporter. He was tall and mean, always ready to back up Minho's bullying with physical intimidation. Jiwon enjoyed making smaller students afraid of him. He had pushed Nari down the stairs twice and laughed about it both times. Do-hyun Choi was the third member of their group. He was the smartest of the three bullies, which made him the most dangerous in some ways. Do-hyun specialized in psychological torment. He would spread rumors about his targets, hack their personal files, or destroy their work in ways that looked like accidents. The three of them had made Nari's school life miserable since she was 14. They called her weird for studying alien life. They said she was crazy for wanting to understand creatures that would kill humans given the chance. They destroyed her research notes, sabotaged her experiments, and made sure other students avoided her. Last week had been particularly bad. Nari had been presenting her xenobiology project to Professor Han's class. She had prepared a detailed analysis of how local crystal formations supported the planet's ecosystem. As she spoke, Minho made loud comments about how boring her presentation was. Jiwon pretended to fall asleep and snore dramatically. Do-hyun recorded everything on his tablet, planning to edit the footage into a humiliating video. After class, the three cornered Nari in the hallway. Minho grabbed her tablet containing months of research and threw it against the wall. The screen cracked and the device stopped working. When Nari tried to retrieve it, Jiwon blocked her path while Do-hyun stepped on the broken tablet, crushing it completely. Professor Han had seen the whole thing but could do nothing. Minho's father controlled too much of the colony's resources. Teachers who challenged the administrator's son often found themselves transferred to less desirable positions. That night, Nari had cried while telling Bayek about what happened. The creature's patterns had turned deep red and pulsed rapidly. For a moment, Nari felt actual anger radiating from the Lumacube. Not just sympathy for her pain, but genuine fury at those who had hurt her. Since then, Beck had grown larger and stronger each day. The creature now measured about the size of a small backpack. Its movements had become more confident and predatory. Sometimes Nari would catch it practicing what looked like hunting behaviors, moving silently through her room and pouncing on imaginary prey. The connection between them continued to deepen. Nari discovered she could sense Beck's moods, even when she was not looking at it. When the creature was hungry, she would feel a hollow sensation in her stomach. When Beck was content, she felt warm and peaceful. The bond was becoming something beyond what either human or Lumacube science could explain. Professor Han had noticed changes in Nari, too. Her understanding of alien psychology had improved dramatically. She could predict the behavior of various local species with uncanny accuracy. Her latest research papers showed insights that impressed even the colony's senior xenobiologists. Han suspected that Nari had found a way to study living specimens rather than just database entries. He had asked her several times about her methods, but Nari always gave vague answers about improved observation techniques. She could not tell him about Bayek without risking the creature's safety. One evening, as Nari worked on homework while Bayek rested nearby, her mother called her to dinner. As she left her room, Nari noticed that Beck's tiger stripes had formed a new pattern. The markings looked almost like Korean characters. When she looked closer, she realized they spelled out her name. The creature was not just bonding with her, it was learning to communicate. That night, Nari dreamed of running through forests under alien stars. In the dream, she was not alone. Something powerful and protective ran beside her, something that would never let anyone hurt her again. When she woke, she found Beck watching her with what looked like understanding in its glowing patterns. The young Lumacube was no longer just a rescued creature. It was becoming something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy, a fusion of human compassion and alien power that would soon change everything. Neither Nari nor Bayek understood what they were becoming. But the bullies who had tormented her for years were about to find out. Beck had grown to the size of a small suitcase. The creature could now change its surface patterns at will. shifting from albino tiger stripes to perfect mimicry of whatever surface it touched. When it pressed against Nari's bedroom wall, it became completely invisible except for a faint shimmer in the air. The bond between them had grown stronger too. Nari could feel Beck's emotions as clearly as her own. More disturbing, she sensed that the creature could feel her pain when the bullies hurt her. Every insult, every broken project, every moment of humiliation was shared between them. 3 days ago, something had changed. Nari was leaving Professor Han's classroom when Minho, Jiwon, and Dohyun surrounded her in the empty hallway. Minho grabbed her backpack and dumped its contents across the floor, her research notes scattered everywhere. Her carefully prepared specimens rolled under lockers where she could not reach them. As she knelt to gather her work, Dohyun stepped on her, hand hard enough to leave bruises. Jiwon kicked her books down the hallway. Minho leaned close and whispered threats about what would happen if she reported them. At that moment, Nari felt something she had never experienced before. A cold, predatory rage that was not entirely her own. For just a second, she saw the bullies through different eyes that measured them as prey, eyes that calculated the best way to hunt them. The feeling passed quickly, but it left her shaken. That night, when she told Bayek about the incident, the creature's patterns turned deep red and black. The colors moved in sharp, aggressive waves across its cubic surface. When Bayek looked at her, Nari saw something that made her step back. Intelligence, burned in those patterns. Ancient alien intelligence that understood only one response to threats: protect the pack, eliminate enemies. The next morning, Jiwon Lee found his hoverbike damaged in the school parking area. The vehicle looked like something with claws had torn through its energy cells and steering systems. Security cameras in the area had malfunctioned, during the night showing only static during the hours when the damage occurred. Jiwon was furious and scared. He accused several students of vandalism, but no one had seen anything. The bike's damage was unlike anything human tools could have caused. The metal showed precise tears that suggested incredible strength and sharp claws, but no known creature on the planet could have reached the parking area without triggering the colony's defense systems. 2 days later, Dohyun experienced his own mysterious incident. He returned to his room after classes to find it completely ransacked. His belongings were scattered everywhere, but nothing was stolen. His computer files had been accessed and corrupted. Months of homework and personal projects were destroyed. Most unsettling, there were no signs of forced entry. The door had not been damaged. The window was still locked from the inside. Colony security reviewed the footage from his building, but found hours of blank recordings. The cameras had somehow been disabled without triggering any alarms. Dohyun reported the break-in to his parents and colony security, but investigators found no evidence of human involvement. They could not explain how someone had entered and left without being detected. The incident was filed as unexplained vandalism, but everyone involved felt uneasy about the complete lack of clues. Minho Park was the last to experience strange events, and his were the most frightening. It started with sounds. Late at night, he would hear low growling outside his window. When he looked out, he saw nothing but empty streets and the normal glow of the colony's lights, but the growling continued, always just at the edge of hearing. Sometimes it seemed to come from inside his room. Then he began noticing things that were out of place. His belongings would be moved slightly when he was not looking. Books arranged, in different orders. Clothes hung in ways he did not remember. Small changes that made him question his own memory. The worst incident happened when he was alone in the school's athletics facility. Minho was practicing combat training when the lights suddenly went out. Emergency lighting should have activated immediately, but the backup systems failed to engage. In the darkness, Minho heard breathing that was not his own. Slow, measured breaths from something large. He called out, demanding to know who was there. The breathing stopped, but he felt eyes watching him. Not human eyes, something predatory that evaluated him like a hunter studying prey. When the lights came back on 5 minutes later, Minho was alone, but he found claw marks scored deep into the metal walls, 4 parallel gouges that could only have been made by something with incredible strength and razor-sharp claws. Security teams investigated all 3 incidents but found no connections between them. The boys had not reported their bullying of Nari, so investigators saw no pattern in the attacks. The damage seemed random and unexplainable, but Nari knew exactly what was happening. Beck was hunting her tormentors. She tried to communicate with the creature about restraint and mercy, but the concept seemed foreign to its alien mind. In Beck's understanding, threats to the pack must be eliminated. The bullies had hurt Nari repeatedly. They were enemies that deserved destruction. The problem was growing beyond her control. Each night she felt Beck's hunting instincts growing stronger. The creature was reaching maturity, and mature lumicubes were apex predators designed to kill efficiently. Its protective instincts toward her were merging with its natural hunting behavior in dangerous ways. More troubling, Nari found herself sharing some of Bayek's predatory thoughts. When she saw the bullies at school, part of her mind automatically calculated their weaknesses. She noticed how they moved, where they were vulnerable, when they were alone. These were not human thoughts. They came from her connection with an alien predator. She was changing too. The bond was affecting her in ways she did not fully understand. Professor Han had begun asking questions about her recent research. Her insights into predator behavior had become unnaturally accurate. She could predict exactly how various alien species would react in different situations. Her knowledge seemed to come from direct experience rather than academic study. Daiho, Yoon, the colony's head of security, had also taken notice. The recent incidents showed energy signatures that did not match any known technology or cataloged life forms. Something was moving through the colony that their sensors could barely detect. Something that could disable security systems and avoid detection by trained guards. Yoon suspected they were dealing with an unknown native species, one that had somehow learned to hunt within the colony's supposedly safe perimeter. He had increased patrols and upgraded sensor networks, but the mysterious predator seemed to adapt to every countermeasure. What Yoon did not know was that the predator was learning human behavior from someone who understood both species. Beck was not just hunting randomly. It was being guided by a human who knew exactly how colony security worked and how to avoid detection. Nari realized she was becoming an accomplice to something that could destroy everything she cared about. But she also felt Beck's fierce loyalty and protective love. The creature would die before allowing anyone to hurt her again. She had to find a way to control what they had become together. Before Beck decided that protection required permanent solutions to the bully problem, before her alien partner graduated from stalking to killing, Beck had reached full size. The creature now measured as large as a hover car, its cubic form rippling with muscle beneath skin that could mimic any surface perfectly. When completely invisible, only the faintest distortion in the air revealed its presence. The young lumicube had become exactly what nature designed it to be, the perfect predator. The bullying had escalated beyond anything Nari had experienced before. Minho, Jiwon, and Do-hyun were frightened by the mysterious incidents plaguing them, and fear made them more vicious. They blamed Nari for their troubles, convinced that she was somehow responsible for their misfortune. Yesterday they had cornered her after classes and destroyed her entire collection of mineral specimens, months of careful research scattered across the hallway floor. When she tried to save what she could, Minho grabbed her arm hard enough to leave finger-shaped bruises. Through their bond, Beck felt every moment of her pain and humiliation. The creature's rage burned like molten metal in her mind. Its hunting instinct screamed for blood and vengeance. Nari barely managed to calm it enough to prevent an immediate attack. But she knew she was losing control. Tonight, everything would come to a head. Minho had announced his plan to teach Nari a final lesson. He convinced his friends that she was using some kind of alien technology to harass them. They would take her to the abandoned mining sector outside the colony's main perimeter. Leave her there overnight to face whatever creatures lived in the deep tunnels. If she survived until morning, maybe she would learn to mind her own business. The plan was cruel even by their standards, but Minho was desperate to end the psychological torment he had been experiencing. He needed to feel powerful and in control again. Hurting Nari had always made him feel better about his own insecurities. Nari knew about their plan. She had overheard them discussing it in the school cafeteria. She could have reported them to colony security or asked Professor Han for help. Instead, she made a different choice. She would go with them willingly, and Beck would follow. The abandoned mining sector was a maze of tunnels and chambers carved deep into the planet's rocky substrate. Years ago, automated mining machines had worked here around the clock, extracting valuable ores and energy crystals. When the deposits were exhausted, the equipment was removed, but the tunnels remained. Colony regulations forbade unauthorized access to the mining sector. The tunnels were unstable and potentially dangerous. More importantly, they extended beyond the colony's defensive perimeter into areas where native predators might roam freely. At sunset, Minho, Jiwon, and Do-hyun met Nari near the school's main entrance. They had prepared their story in advance. They would tell authorities that Nari had suggested exploring the old mines for her xenobiology research. If something happened to her, it would look like an accident caused by her own reckless curiosity. The walk to the mining sector took an hour through rough terrain. Nari cooperated fully, making no attempt to escape or call for help. Her calm behavior unnerved the bullies, who had expected tears and pleading. Instead, she seemed almost eager to reach their destination. They entered the tunnels through a maintenance shaft that had been left unsealed. Emergency lighting still functioned in the main passages, casting eerie shadows on the carved rock walls. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the enclosed space. Jiwon carried a powerful flashlight to supplement the dim emergency lights. Do-hyun had brought rope to tie Nari up if she tried to escape. Minho wore his father's security override device, which would unlock any doors or barriers they encountered. None of them noticed the fourth presence following them into the darkness. Beck moved through the tunnels like a living shadow. The creature's perfect camouflage made it invisible even to enhanced security sensors. Its padded feet made no sound on the rocky floor. To Nari, its presence felt like a warm, protective embrace. To anyone else, it would have been a death sentence, walking behind them. Deep in the tunnel system, Minho found the perfect place for their plan. A large chamber with only one entrance, connected to deeper passages that led into the planet's dangerous wilderness areas. They could leave Nari here and seal the entrance behind them. She would be trapped with no way to call for help. As they prepared to abandon her, Minho made one final mistake. He grabbed Nari's arm again, squeezing the bruises he had left the day before. He wanted her to understand exactly how helpless she was, how completely he controlled her fate. Through their bond, Beck felt Minho's grip like a burning brand on its own flesh. The creature had endured weeks of watching Nari suffer. It had restrained its hunting instincts through tremendous effort. But this final act of cruelty broke something fundamental in the alien predator's mind. The hunt began. First, the lights went out. All of them, including Jiwon's flashlight. The emergency lighting failed as if something had systematically disabled every power source in the chamber. Absolute darkness fell like a heavy blanket. In the darkness, they heard breathing that was not human. Slow, measured breaths from something large and patient. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Jiwon screamed and fumbled for his flashlight. When he finally got it working, the beam revealed nothing but empty tunnel walls and their own frightened faces. But the breathing continued, always just outside the light's reach. Do-hyun tried to use his tablet's emergency beacon, but the device showed no signal. They were too deep underground, and something was interfering with communications anyway. The screen displayed only static and error messages. Minho activated his father's security override and demanded that whoever was playing games should show themselves immediately. His voice cracked with fear despite his attempts to sound authoritative. The breathing stopped. In the sudden silence, they heard footsteps. Not human footsteps. Something heavy moving on padded feet, circling them just beyond the flashlight's range. The steps were perfectly spaced and deliberate. A predator taking its time with prey that had nowhere to run. Then Beck began to play with them. The creature would appear for just a moment at the edge of their vision, a glimpse of glowing tiger stripes before vanishing back into darkness. Sometimes, they would see eyes reflecting the flashlight beam. Ancient, intelligent eyes that measured them with cold calculation. Jiwon broke first. He ran toward what he thought was the exit, screaming for help. But the tunnel passages had changed somehow. Corridors that should have led back to the surface now ended in blank walls or dropped into black pits. The creature was herding them deeper into the maze, using its knowledge of the tunnel system to trap them completely. When Jiwon finally stopped running, he found himself alone in a small chamber with no visible exits. His flashlight showed scratch marks on the walls, deep gouges that could only have been made by something with incredible strength and razor-sharp claws. The same marks they had seen at the school athletics facility. Do-hyun tried to be logical about their situation. He analyzed the tunnel layout on his tablet, looking for patterns that would reveal their tormentor's strategy. But every time he thought he understood the creature's behavior, it would do something unexpected. It was learning from their reactions, adapting its tactics to maximize their fear. When claws scraped against stone just inches from his head, Do-hyun finally understood what they were facing. This was not some random native creature. This was something that had been studying them for weeks. Something that knew their habits, their fears, their weaknesses. Something that hated them personally. Minho lasted the longest before panic claimed him. His father's position had always protected him from consequences. He expected authority and status to shield him even here. He shouted demands and threats into the darkness, promising terrible punishment for whoever dared to frighten the administrator's son. Beck's response was to become visible directly in front of him. The creature appeared suddenly in the flashlight beam, no longer bothering with camouflage. Its cubic form filled the tunnel passage, tiger stripes flowing in hypnotic patterns across its surface. Eyes like burning stars focused on Minho with predatory intensity. For the first time in his life, Minho Park realized he was not the most dangerous thing in the room. He was not even close. He was prey, and something perfectly designed to kill him was deciding whether he was worth the effort. In that moment of absolute terror, all three bullies finally understood what Nari had been trying to tell them for years. They were not the center of the universe. They were not automatically superior to everything around them. In the vast alien wilderness of space, humans survived only through cooperation and respect for forces beyond their control. They had forgotten that lesson. Now something ancient and powerful was teaching it to them in the only language they understood: fear. Bayek stood before the three terrified bullies like a living nightmare. Its massive cubic form blocked their escape route completely. Tiger stripes pulsed with deadly intent across its surface. The creature had spent weeks planning this moment, and now it was ready to fulfill its purpose as nature's perfect predator. Minho, Jiwon, and Do-hyun huddled together against the tunnel wall. Their flashlight beam shook wildly in Jiwon's trembling hands. They had never imagined that death could have such beautiful, terrible patterns. The aliens' bioluminescent stripes were hypnotic even as they promised destruction. Beck took one slow step toward them. Its claws scraped against stone with sounds like breaking glass. The creature's eyes burned with intelligence and rage. It had watched them hurt Nari for weeks. It had felt every moment of her pain through their bond. Now it would end their threat permanently. The bullies pressed themselves against the wall, knowing they had nowhere to run. This was how they would die. Torn apart by something that should not exist, in a place where no one would ever find their bodies. Then Nari appeared. She stepped into the tunnel passage behind Bayek, moving without fear despite the creature's massive size and obvious killing intent. Her presence changed everything immediately. The deadly patterns on Bayek's surface shifted to brighter, gentler colors. The creature's aggressive posture relaxed slightly, but Nari could see that Bayek was still committed to violence. The alien predator had been pushed beyond its limits. It would not be satisfied until the threats to its pack were eliminated completely. She had to do something that no human had ever attempted before. She had to convince an apex predator to show mercy to its enemies. Nari began speaking in Korean, her voice calm and steady despite the danger. She used the same gentle tone she had used when nursing Beck back to health as a dying cub. Mixed with her Korean words were the clicking sounds and tonal patterns she had learned from months of communicating with the creature. What she said would have been impossible for any human linguist to translate. She was not just speaking Korean, or trying to mimic Lumicube communication. She was using a new form of language that merged human concepts with alien understanding, a bridge between two different ways of thinking about the world. She told Bayek about the difference between justice and revenge. She explained human concepts of mercy and redemption that had no equivalent in Lumicube culture. Most importantly, she shared her own feelings about what the bullies meant to her now. They were not enemies anymore. They were frightened children who had learned a terrible lesson about their place in the universe. They would never hurt anyone again, because they finally understood what it felt like to be helpless and afraid. The bullies watched in amazement as the massive predator actually listened to Nari's words. Beck's aggressive patterns softened further, shifting from deep reds and blacks to confused swirls of blue and gold. The creature was struggling to understand concepts that went against its deepest instincts. But the bond between human and alien was stronger than instinct. Through their connection, Beck could feel Nari's genuine desire for peace. She was not asking it to ignore threats to the pack. She was asking it to recognize that the threats no longer existed. As Nari continued speaking, something extraordinary happened. Her words began to create visible patterns in the air around her, bioluminescent traces that looked like writing in an unknown language. The tunnel filled with soft light that seemed to come from her voice itself. Professor Han and Daiho Yoon chose that moment to arrive. They had been tracking the energy signatures that Beck's presence created in the colony's sensor networks. The readings had led them to the abandoned mining sector, where they expected to find evidence of a dangerous native predator. Instead, they found something that challenged everything they thought they knew about interspecies communication. Han immediately recognized what he was witnessing. This was first contact of a completely new kind. Not the usual pattern of human expansion followed by alien resistance or submission. This was genuine partnership between species that should have been natural enemies. Yoon raised his weapon instinctively, but Han stopped him with a gesture. The security chief could see that despite the creature's enormous size and obvious power, it posed no immediate threat. Its attention was completely focused on the young woman who continued speaking to it in impossible languages. The bioluminescent patterns around Nari grew brighter and more complex. She was not just communicating with Bayek anymore. She was demonstrating abilities that human science said were impossible. Telepathic connection across species barriers, empathic understanding of alien psychology, the power to convince a predator to act against its nature through pure emotional resonance. Finally, Beck made its decision. The creature stepped backward, away from the cowering bullies. Its patterns shifted to gentle gold and white. The colors it had shown when Nari first rescued it from the woods. The immediate threat was over, but the larger implications were just beginning. Han approached slowly, speaking in calm, professional tones. He identified himself as a xenobiologist and assured everyone that colony security was not planning any hostile actions. He was primarily interested in understanding what had just occurred. Nari explained how she had found Bayek as a dying cub and nursed it back to health. She described the bond that had developed between them and the abilities she had discovered through their connection. She admitted to hiding Bayek in her room for months, knowing it was against colony regulations. The bullies remained silent, still, processing their encounter with death and their unexpected reprieve. They would never be the same after tonight. The experience had broken their sense of invulnerability and taught them empathy through terror. Yoon was fascinated by the security implications. A creature that could become completely invisible and disable electronic systems at will could have infiltrated any area of the colony. The fact that it had chosen to protect rather than prey on humans suggested possibilities that could revolutionize their understanding of planetary defense. Over the following days, teams of scientists studied the bond between Nari and Bayek. They discovered that she had developed neural pathways that allowed direct communication with alien consciousness. Her brain had literally evolved to accommodate the connection, creating new structures that bridged human and lumicube psychology. The research revealed that humans possessed a previously unknown capacity for interspecies bonding. Under the right conditions, people could form genuine partnerships with alien life forms, creating hybrid consciousness that combined the strengths of both species. Nari became the colony's first official xenobiological ambassador. Her role was to facilitate communication between humans and the various alien species that shared their world. Back served as her partner and protector, demonstrating that even apex predators could choose cooperation over conflict. The bullies underwent psychological rehabilitation, working with counselors to process their trauma and develop genuine empathy for others. Minho's father implemented sweeping changes to colony policies, establishing new protections for both human outcasts and alien life forms. Most importantly, word of Nari's success spread to other human colonies throughout the galaxy. Young people began seeking out alien companions, forming bonds that had never existed before in galactic history. Humanity had found its true calling among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as bridges between different forms of consciousness. They were uniquely equipped to understand and communicate with alien minds, creating partnerships that made both species stronger. In the end, the story of the girl who saved a dying predator became the foundation for a new chapter in human evolution, one where compassion and understanding proved more powerful than fear and violence. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but the greatest wonder of all was the capacity for connection that existed in every human heart. Even in the darkest moments, that connection could transform enemies into allies and create bonds that transcended the boundaries between species. Nari Kim had discovered that truth in the Whispering Woods. Now it would reshape the future of human civilization among the stars.